All right. We've got a fun one today, the Topo Pursuit, which is a new trail shoe to the Topo lineup. It is kind of their first medium to higher stack zero drop shoe. They've done zero drop shoes in the past, but all of them have been on that more minimal side. This one's definitely got a little bit of cushion to it, and it was kind of pleasantly fun to run in. Definitely has a lot of design heritage coming from their other trail shoes, like outsole is kind of tried and true, wide toe box. Yeah, let's get into it. Finn, how are you doing?
I'm doing good, and I know we've done a lot of shoe reviews at this point. Most of my miles have been logged on the Salt Lake City shoreline trails, but I'm sure we'll get into it in a second. I actually brought this shoe international. I tested this shoe on the European scene, so very excited to get into today's chat.
Really? This was the shoe that you took to Europe, or at least one of them?
I took two shoes to Europe. I took this Topo, and then I also took one of VJ's shoes, which I think we're going to be reviewing later today. So, yeah, wow. Interesting landscapes.
Definitely. Okay. Well, before we get going, a little disclaimer that these shoes were provided to us by Topo. We're under no financial obligation to say whether we like a product or not. We want to keep these reviews and authentic and beneficial for you. So all of these opinions are our own. Few stats before we get into the actual review of this. $140 USD for this shoe. Mine came out to weigh 11.6 ounces in my US size 10. It is 28 millimeter forefoot, 28 millimeter heel, zero drop shoe, which definitely falls kind of right into that like medium, almost to higher stack type shoe. Materials for the shoe, like what do we got going on here? So this is kind of a tighter woven mesh upper, somewhat breathable. A little additional structure right around the heel and the lacing system. Pretty generously padded heel cup.
Brett, what's our reference point here for what they're calling zip foam on the heel cup?
So the zip foam, like that's what the entire midsole is made of. And basically zip foam is just their own like proprietary blend of EVA. It's just a classic EVA foam. It is split into two layers. So for this shoe, the blue layer that's a little thicker under forefoot, gets a little thinner towards the heel. It's a softer version of their zip foam. And then the darker layer down below is firmer, gives the shoe its structure, adds a little bit more protection, probably increases that durability. But yeah, it's just kind of a classic EVA. So we're no like super foams or anything like that in there. The outsole is Vibram Mega Grip. It's not the light base, so it's a little bit thicker in terms of what the lugs are actually attached to. And this is an outsole that Topo's been actually using for a number of years, like the exact lug pattern and everything. And I think it works great. It definitely seems like the design behind this outsole was to be like pretty good at most things and not specialize in any one particular thing. So it works across a pretty wide variety of terrains as well as weather. That Vibram outsole rubber is one of the best in terms of wet weather, wet rock type usage. Finn, how many miles did you run out of this Topo Pursuit?
This is going to be a record for me, and I can't imagine any other shoe review having this many miles. I put 182 miles on this shoe.
Wow, you must have really liked it.
So for context, I was out at UTMB back in the last 2 weeks of August 2022, and I brought this shoe with me. My partner and I did a ton of miles with this shoe hiking the TMB route. So I got some hiking miles in with it. And then also during the week of UTMB, did a bunch of runs in those mountains, like running up to the Brabant, going up towards Akimi D. This shoe had experienced it all out in Chamonix.
Wow. Did you see many Topos out in Chamonix?
I did not. In fact, I'm trying to rack my brain right now. There's this big exhibitor station in downtown Chamonix that's there for like 7 or 8 days. And of course, Hoka's there, Altra's there. Notably absent Nike. I did not see Nike there, which fascinated me, and did not see Topo either. But almost every other shoe brand in our sport was there, so very interesting.
Yeah, definitely. I would say Topo's getting to be a more established brand in North America, but I still feel like that, in the grand scheme of things, they're pretty small running shoe company.
And it's funny because I actually have so many good things to say about the shoe. Before I ever tried the shoe on, all of my associations with the brand, or at least how I thought about them from afar, they always felt to me like that obscure brand that lower tier elite runners went to pretend that they had a shoe sponsorship. And they kind of felt like the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Ouch.
I'll even go further. The Jacksonville Jaguars of trail running, dare I say.
Damn.
But this experience has revolutionized my feelings about the brand. Those are the last negative things I'm going to say, because this is actually a super cool shoe.
All right. Yeah. I got in, I was only able to get in 75 miles out of the shoe, and it wasn't because I wasn't able to run in this shoe. Just with the way my training worked around javelina, I just kind of ran out of time, and I have not run much since. But of the 75 miles that I got in the shoe, I got in a really wide variety of types of runs. Like, I got in a couple long runs. I even trusted the shoe with some harder, higher intensity workouts. I took it on a pretty wide range of trails. Not too much in terms of technical. And even in the last few runs that I did in this shoe, I actually did run in the rain, in the mud. So get a little bit of actual outsole testing. And yeah, it's used, it held up really well, kind of across a, multitude of intensities and terrains. In terms of the fit, how did this work for you? Was it your kind of standard size?
Yeah, these seem to me like a very close competitor to Altra, like in terms of the fit up in the toe box and just general comfort for the ride for someone like me that just has that wider forefoot. This seemed like an excellent alternative option, and slightly sexier, I would say, than like those mid 2010s like Ultra Olympuses and Lone Peaks that were coming out. Like, I actually felt somewhat stylish, somewhat self-confident walking around, running around in these. And so I now think of them as the more elegant Ultra in a sense.
Yeah, this company definitely has been compared to Ultra a lot, largely because they have a lower drop. Ultra is all zero drop, whereas Topo's either been 0 all the way up to 5 millimeter drop, as well as, having a very wide forefoot. But I think that's where a lot of the similarities stop with the shoe. I mean, Topo's definitely taken their time releasing shoes, which Ultra has definitely gone for we are going to release a ton of shoes and just see what works. Whereas Topo is very careful with the shoes that they release and the changes that they make, which is why they've thrown an outsole on this shoe that they've put on 4 of their other trail models. They really care about the detail and what exactly are you getting, like a combination of upper, midsole, outsole. And kind of with that comes a lot of consistency. So I feel like it ran very true to size. Mine was a size 10, yep. And lengthwise it was spot on with most other size 10s. I have about index fingers with the space at the front. That's just from a length standpoint. From a width standpoint, I would say this is definitely one of the wider forefoots that I've ever used for a shoe. But it's not wide everywhere. I mean, it tapers down to a pretty medium width under the midfoot and the heel, which I'm grateful for, because I think had this width carried on to the entirety of the shoe, I would have just been slipping and sliding all over the place. But even though it was a wide forefoot and I don't necessarily need that, I was still able to lock my foot down to a point where I could go get in quality training miles on it and I'm not moving around at all.
Interesting. One thing that I noticed, and maybe this was happening past the 100-mile mark, but I was noticing, and this is one of my negatives, I was noticing the sidewall material, the material in the upper here sort of collapsing the sidewall material over the outsole of the shoe. Has this been common for you in the Topo or in any other shoes that you've tested in the past? And is this a cause for concern in your opinion? What immediately comes to mind is that sounds almost more like if
the midsole foam and like the shape and the structure of the arch. If your foot, if you have like a lower arch, or you know, overpronate an amount, you know, and that section of the shoe just starts to break down quicker than other sections of the shoe, like that person's going to notice it more because it is kind of a curvy shoe. I mean, maybe you need a little bit wider stance right underfoot. Like for me personally, like Topo's arch shape, I really like, and like it hasn't had any of that sort of like interior breakdown at all. So I think something like that's going to vary a lot from person to person. The higher stack the shoe, the more prone that's going to be to happen. You know, the softer the shoe, the more foam. If you have a slightly uneven foot strike, those imbalances in the midsole foam are going to just happen more. So that might just be a byproduct of the shape of the shoe versus your foot, as well as the softer foam.
Yep. I supinate a lot too. So I kind of felt like that seemed like an obvious concern for me just because of the nature of how I run.
Yeah, totally. And even those people that supinate and land like pretty heavily on the outside, that doesn't mean that their foot doesn't come crashing inward at all. Like you could be a heavy supinator and still fully land out in somewhat of a pronated stance. And, you know, that's something that, you know, is going to vary a ton from person to person, but that could be what you're noticing, which is going to affect the durability of the shoe, you know, as a whole. With that being said, I really thought that this shoe was kind of a, you know, can almost do anything in its sort of shoe. You know, like they say the jack of all trades, master of none. And I kind of feel like that's where Topo's landed with this Pursuit. And that's not a bad thing. You know, like it's a shoe you could throw in your suitcase on vacation and be pretty confident that it's going to be able to handle all the running.
My thinking exactly,
you know, that you give it. Would you do a race in it?
I would not. No, this is like you just said perfectly, the shoe that I would take on vacation, knowing that it could be the jackknife for me. Like tomorrow, for example, it's a Friday. There's a weekly group run here in the place called Corner Canyon. I'm going to go take this on an 8-mile, 1,200 foot ascending and descending type run, where like it's a low pressure situation. The miles are going to be comfortable with it, but like I'm not trying to break any land speed records or compete or do a workout or race. It's I feel very comfortable in like the everyday scenarios with this shoe.
Totally. And while I did do some workouts in the shoe, I don't think I would throw it on for races because I did still desire a little bit more locked in foot or feel across the forefoot. And that was like the only, like kind of the only gripe about, you know, this wider forefoot is like, I still did have a little bit of movement, but for most of my daily training, I want comfort and I don't need super high performance. And I thought this shoe provided that really well. So that kind of brings to like, what did Topo design this shoe for? And were they right?
To me, again, this feels like the shoe you would wear in the midst of a 100-mile week where you're looking to just build mileage. You're looking to do like all day aerobic type mileage in low risk scenarios.
Yeah. So like it's kind of it's just your reliable shoe. It sounds like we're kind of going back to the minivan type metaphor.
I wore this shoe in a lot of scenarios similar to ones I wore the Brooks Caldera in, actually.
Yeah.
Very similar for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think this is kind of the shoe. And I think that is what Topo designed it for. You know, it was kind of called their comfortable trail shoe to take on any occasion. And I think they were right with that because it really, they didn't sacrifice comfort for performance in regards to a lot of the elements of the shoe. And you do get a very high quality kind of package, which I guess kind of leads to like, where's the value in the shoe? I think you get a lot of shoe for $140. Like you get, I mean, I have no like durability issues. There's no signs of wear on the upper. You get the name brand outsole. You get the Vibram Mega Grip. Normally you have to pay quite a premium for that now. I guess really like, I feel like the weakest link of this shoe might just be the midsole foam being kind of just your classic EVA. It feels like that is probably the part of the shoe that's going to wear out first. Like I noticed because, the outsole here is segmented. There are some exposed sections of EVA and there's no rock plate or protective plate in this shoe. I did notice on a couple occasions, like I could feel a rock that I would step on here, and those extra hits do break down the EVA faster. So I could see the forefoot cushioning maybe being the first thing to go, but I don't think it would go so quickly that, the shoe doesn't provide a good amount of quality miles. Like I still think for $140, this is super reasonable. What do you think?
Well, I wanted to ask you a question, and I know we talked about where we think the use case is, but if we were talking to somebody in Topo product design or in their marketing department, where do you think they would tell us to perform with this shoe, like in like a trail or ultra racing environment? If you had to guess,
imagine they would say, if you need more width in the forefoot and you're running long races where, ultimately the longer the race, the slower you're going to go. And the longer you're out there, the more just pure comfort becomes important. If you just need that extra wiggle room in the forefoot and you want a lower drop shoe, that's just going to work for a long amount of time. This is going to be that shoe. So, I could totally see it working in those easily 50 mile, 100K, 100 mile type scenarios, just because of the comfort that you get out of the shoe with the way that it's built.
Couple fun facts on my end. I just learned before this interview that Topo is named after the founder, Tony Post. So huge kudos for that. I think that's a clever way to do it. And I don't know, like this, I feel like this shoe must have some sort of cult status in the trail runners world, because I don't know many athletes off the top of my head, at least on like the elite competitive scene, that wear it. And I'm curious to know who their like ideal buyer is, like who they sell to competing against Hoka and Altra, because I definitely gained some appreciation for this brand running with this shoe.
Yeah, and it's a shoe. So you will see it in a good handful of like running specialty stores. They've tried hard to get on the shelves of actual running specialty brick and mortar stores. And, I think a company who understands the value in running specialty stores is maybe not going to be the company that takes off like wildfire immediately, but they're looking long-term clearly with how they've approached this sport and how they've grown their company. It's been kind of a slow burn, and I expect Topo to be around and, producing great high quality shoes for a really long time. If you do, feel like you want to try this shoe out and your local run specialty shop does not have them, we will have a link below to, get these shoes through with our friends at Running Warehouse. Anything else you want to leave the listeners, Finn?
No, I know that I gave the brand a hard time at the top of this interview, but that was largely out of ignorance. I do think that what I said was funny, but ultimately not true. And shoe reviews go a long way in terms of changing minds. If you have a good product and we get our hands on it, I got smacked with reality, and this is an awesome shoe.